We're still at war. Americans are still at risk. Civilians across the region are still dying for no reason that anyone can truly articulate. In reality, the only thing that Donald Trump has accomplished over the last 6 weeks is more chaos. Because of his choices, a new younger Ayatollah is in charge, who seems even more radical than his father was.
This wasn't just another Senate speech. It was a war warning from a senator who has actually bled and won. Tammy Duckworth came to the floor, not simply as a Democrat attacking Donald Trump, but as a former soldier who survived Iraq, recovered at Walter Reed, and says she ran for office to stop America from sleepwalking into another open-ended Middle East conflict. In her telling, this is the central question: if troops are willing to risk everything when ordered, why won't elected leaders do the constitutional work of debating, authorizing, and owning that war in public?
Thank you, Mr. President. I've come to the floor today as a United States Senator, of course, but also as a former soldier who served in uniform the last time a president rashly sent our men and women into an unjustified war in the Middle East. I spent nearly a year at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, recovering from the injuries I earned in Iraq. And every morning, as I struggled to sit up straight, every time I was rolled into yet another surgery, I made sure to read the poster I had next to my hospital bed. It was a framed copy of the Soldier's Creed, the words that those lucky enough to wear the Army uniform live by. That same framed copy now hangs by my desk here in D.C. And as I glanced at it this morning, I realized that there's perhaps no greater proof that Donald Trump never deigned to serve a day in his life than the mockery he makes of the Soldier's Creed's commitments every single day he has been in office. The creed may be associated with the Army, but the sentiments hold true for all of those who wear the uniform of this great nation. Its 13 lines tells us to be disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained, proficient, and to look out for those who look out for us, to look out for one another. Donald Trump is supposed to be our service members' commander-in-chief. The very least we should expect of him is to epitomize the standards that we ask our troops to swear by, to live by. The very least we should expect of the commander-in-chief is to be as competent, disciplined, and professional as the men and women whose very lives hinge on his capacity to lead, on that competence and professionalism we expect to see in the White House. The Creed makes clear that our troops will never quit, that they will never leave a fallen comrade behind, yet Cadet Bone Spurs is someone who will always quit. And every hour he orders our service members to remain in unnecessary growing danger, he is proving that Donald Trump does not give a damn about leaving a comrade or so many comrades behind. Every moment that Donald Trump leaves our heroes mired in the muck of this illegal war of choice in Iran, he is showing that he cares more about saving his own face than leading our troops. So I come to the floor today with a simple question. Our military men and women go out there every day and do their jobs, no matter the risk, all on Donald Trump's orders. So I ask you, Mr. President, why the hell can't you do your job too? Why can't you live up to the same level of proficiency as our troops? Look, I'm proud of every mission I completed in Iraq, but I would never, ever wish another endless, needless, unjustified war like the one I served in on anybody else. I wouldn't wish it on the heroes who are packing up their rucks right now, knowing they may never touch American soil again. I wouldn't wish it on their families who are being forced to spend their days anxiously awaiting news from half a world away. And I wouldn't wish it on the American people who want their president to focus on bringing the costs down here at home, not starting new, expensive, taxpayer-funded wars continents away. But Trump either doesn't understand or he simply doesn't care about that. From the moment this conflict began, the president has tried to shroud his incompetence behind the valor of our service members. When asked to justify his illegal actions, Donald Trump's tried to hide his cowardice behind our heroes' courage. He's tried to act as if questioning why we're at war is the same as questioning the skill and bravery of our troops themselves. It isn't. And I'm here to call bullshit on the President of the United States, because I know that our military will always do the best job possible. When given a mission, our service members will say, yes, I will serve. They don't say, why me? They don't ask, will I be safe? No. They dust off their boots, they show up, and they do what's asked of them to the best of their ability every single time after time, tour after tour, no matter the risk, no matter the sacrifice. They will always, always execute their orders to the maximum capability of their professionalism, and they are proud to do it. That isn't the problem. The problem here is that the person who's supposed to be leading them spends more time talking about his Marie Antoinette ballroom than he does sitting in the Situation Room trying to get us out of this war. The problem is the guy who claims to be making America great again looks at the word America and only sees the letters M and E in the middle of it. The problem is that the commander-in-chief not only has no idea what the end state is like for his war of choice, but properly doesn't even know what the term end state means at all.
That opening matters because Duckworth is building moral authority before she makes a political accusation. She is saying, I know what war costs, and that is why I do not accept casual, improvised, ego-driven war-making from Washington. Her attack on Trump is harsh, personal, and relentless, but the deeper structure of the speech is bigger than one man. She is contrasting the discipline demanded of soldiers with the discipline she says is missing at the top of the chain of command. That is why she keeps returning to duty, sacrifice, and oath. This is not framed as a normal partisan dispute. It is framed as a betrayal of the standards America imposes on its own troops.
The problem is that even in the last 2 weeks, the man who is in charge of our nation's nuclear codes has himself gone increasingly nuclear. He's not believing literal war with Iran is enough. He's now gone on to proverbial war with the Vatican, choosing to pick fights with the Pope of all people. The Pope! Rather than try to engage in any semblance of real diplomacy to end the conflict in the Middle East. He's threatened to annihilate an entire civilization, terrifying people overseas and here at home who are understandably worried about retaliatory strikes. And now, after one half-assed day of so-called negotiations with Iran, he's whipsawed to the next risky frontier in the region, a dangerous, complex, partial military blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, launching it at our nation's expense with no justification, no explanation, or any real plan of what comes next. His only plan seems to rely on the valor, the willingness to sacrifice, the professionalism of our military men and women. But let me tell you, that is not enough. They need a true commander. But Trump is Trump, and he is actively, unabashedly telling us how to ignore what we are all seeing with our own eyes. He's trying to declare mission accomplished, despite his obvious failures at every single turn. He's declaring, and I quote, "We did it, we're winning," after all signs point to the opposite. We're still at war. Americans are still at risk. Civilians across the region are still dying for no reason that anyone can truly articulate. In reality, the only thing that Donald Trump has accomplished over the last 6 weeks is more chaos. Because of his choices, a new younger Ayatollah is in charge, who seems even more radical than his father was. 13 American heroes have been killed, with hundreds more wounded. More Gold Star parents are grieving their children. And more American families are struggling to afford the spiking gas prices. They're unsure if they can pay even more every time they go to the gas station. But they have to, because they need to get to work. They've got to take their kids to school. They've got to take their aging parents to the doctor. The farmers of Illinois, the farmers of this great nation, have seen at the time that we should be planting, their input costs skyrocket because of Donald Trump's war of choice. Look, war is always tragic, but when it's preventable, when it's unjustified, it's not just tragic, it's a travesty. Trump wouldn't let himself be dragged in by the bone spurs to serve in Vietnam. So how dare he drag our nation into a war of his choice today? But this draft dodger, this 5-time draft dodger, is too infatuated with maximum pressure to make a serious effort at even minimum diplomacy. Once again, the Trump foreign policy doctrine has proven reckless, senseless, and dangerous. A doctrine in which fact and fiction are one and the same, one in which our commander-in-chief seems to come to military decisions by virtue of temper tantrums and announces them via tweet in the middle of the night, and one in which avarice outweighs advice every single time. Look, unlike Trump, I actually know what it's like to leave your blood soaking into the desert sand a half a world away. So I know what it's like. I know what it's like and what is at stake for the troops this administration is sending into harm's way. We must safeguard their valor and their professionalism by doing our jobs. I can tell you this, it's a whole lot easier to cover your eyes and order other Americans to sacrifice their children and sacrifice themselves if you don't have to do any of the sacrificing yourself. It's easier to send other people's children to fight in a war if you know your own children are cozy in a penthouse suite somewhere. It's easier to ignore the everyday realities of war from inside the hallowed halls of the White House, where you've got McDonald's being door-dashed to the Oval Office. But it's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible if you've been actually outside the wire yourself. So I've come to the floor today to keep true a promise I first made over 2 decades ago. I ran for Congress, not because I wanted to be in Congress, not because I wanted to be a congressman or a senator. I ran for Congress to honor the men and women who carried me out of that bloody war zone. I made a promise that when the drums of war started beating again, I would be in a position to make sure that our elected officials fully consider the true cause of war, not just in terms of money, but in human lives and in the sacrifices of the men and women who wear the colors of this great nation. That was the vow I made to the troops I deployed with and to all of those who've served since I've hung up my uniform. I'm here today under this great Capitol dome to keep that most sacred oath, because right now, thousands of our troops are ready to do their jobs, even if it means laying down their lives. And it's tragic, it's disgusting to me that even as they prepare to do their jobs, our president and some members of this chamber seem so eager to neglect their own. So as those drums of war echo louder than they have ever in years, I am here to remind Donald Trump that he does not have the authority to unilaterally force us into war. He may never have read the Constitution, but I have. So let me direct his attention to Article 1, which makes clear that only Congress has the power to declare war. We are the ones tasked with deciding when and how Americans are sent into combat. We are the ones charged with that most solemn duty. Yet Trump is acting as if Article 1 simply doesn't exist, as if obeying the Constitution is optional, as if our founding document is just a yellowing, crumbling piece of paper that he can crumble up and toss into the garbage can at will. This should not, must not be a partisan issue. No matter if you're struggling to pay rent, or if your name is plastered in fake gold on a building on Fifth Avenue, no one can ignore the Constitution, especially if you've sworn an oath to defend it. No matter if you're a Mar-a-Lago worker pulling down double shifts of the President of the United States, no one is above the law. Look, I believe fully that there are certain solemn, urgent times when our military must be called upon to defend us. There are certain moments when the threat in question is significant and imminent, instances when military force is the most effective tool at hand, and that using it is necessary to protect America and her interests. The thing is, from what little information the Trump administration has shared publicly that he hasn't immediately contradicted, in sometimes the same sentence, this was not one of those times. But if the administration thinks that I'm wrong and there was imminent, reasonable, actual threat to America, then guess what? The floor is theirs. Come to the Senate with just 20 minutes from the White House. It's not hard to find. It's even faster in your motorcade, Mr. President. It's not hard to find us. We're the building with the big dome on top. We're only a 20-minute walk. Trump knows where the Capitol building is. It's a spot he told the insurrectionists to march towards on January 6th. So if his team actually believes that war is unjustified, then they need to come to Congress and do their jobs. Explain their case, giving the American people a say through their elected representatives, the members who sit at every one of these desks in this chamber. They need to respect the American people enough to finally tell them why they're being forced to bear the cost of this conflict, both in dollars and cents and daughters and sons. They need to respect our service members enough to prove why war with Iran is worth more children growing up without their mom or dad. They need to make it clear that they've thought this through and well enough that they can actually articulate what an end state with this war of choice in Iran would even look like. Then, when their case has been made, when the debate here in Congress is completed, then the members of this chamber must vote. It's our duty. Yes, it is our burden. It's the least we can do for those who are willing to sacrifice everything to safeguard this democracy. But if the Trump administration refuses to do that, if they refuse to adhere to the Constitution, well, then it begs the question, what are you hiding?
This is where the story widens. Duckworth is not arguing in a vacuum. Her speech lands inside a broader revolt over who owns the Iran war politically, financially, and morally. As the conflict drags on, lawmakers from her side keep hammering three pressure points: troop casualties, consumer pain at home, and the claim that the administration still has not laid out a convincing end state. Her rhetoric is incendiary because she wants the stakes to feel immediate. The message is not someday this could become another Iraq. The message is, it is happening now, and Congress is being tested in real time. The most explosive passages in Duckworth's speech are designed for viral circulation. She mocks Trump's discipline, says he is declaring victory while chaos spreads, and paints the war as a deadly vanity project sustained by the professionalism of troops and the cowardice of politicians. But for a documentary-style video, the key is not just to repeat those attacks. The key is to show why they resonate. She is fusing three narratives into one: a veteran's warning, a constitutional indictment, and a kitchen table argument that war abroad is hitting families at home through gas prices, inflation, and national exhaustion. That combination is what gives the speech its force. Then comes Duckworth's pressure point on Republicans. She is not really asking whether they admire Trump or dislike Iran. She is asking whether they still believe their oath means anything when it becomes inconvenient. Vote for the resolution, she says, and prove that Congress still matters. Vote against it, and prove that the Constitution comes second to protecting one president's ego. That is why the speech is built like an ultimatum. She wants every Republican vote to look like a moral choice, not a procedural one. Tammy Duckworth's speech works because it is not merely angry. It is structured like an accusation on behalf of people who do not get to choose the consequences. Soldiers do not choose the politics of a war. Families do not choose the gas spikes, the fear, or the funerals. And if Congress does not insist on its own authority now, then every future debate about war becomes easier for presidents to bypass and harder for the public to stop. Duckworth's closing message is brutally clear. If senators are willing to praise the troops but unwilling to defend the Constitution that sends them into battle, then their oath is just theater. And that is the line your video should leave ringing in the audience's ears, not whether this speech was harsh, but whether it was right.